present, Ms. Solis, Ms. Takada, Mr. Oxford, Judge Hagerty, myself, and Ms. Robles. Anyone here for a public comment? No? Public comment? 1, 2, 3. Public comment. Mr. Pettis, it's all yours.
Mr. Chair, board members, good afternoon. We're back just for one item. It's obviously a very important item.
One item from us?
It's basically, if you recall, is to give you an update on what we found out on Northwest. On the competitive sales proposals. Since we last met, I'll give you a summary since we last met. Highway Construction did not get bonding and was forced to withdraw their proposal. The evaluation committee met and they decided to cancel the solicitation. We've been in contact with Architect on a regular basis. We talked to subcontractors, we talked to contractors, we talked to another professional estimating in addition to the ones we've had not involved with the project to get their feedback as well. And also we got our own civil engineers to do their own takeoff and look at ways where we can value engineer the site works, considering that there was a huge portion of the reason that we're over. And we also met with the VCM's third-party estimate. Actually, that happened this morning with the president of the construction costing company and got some more feedback from them. We gave them some homework to do as well. And we also asked our third-party reviewer, which is AECOM, that is the review thing, which is another section that's a lot over, to do a more thorough review and see if there's anything in there we might have missed to cause the price to be so high. What did we find out? Well, we found out the proposals were real. And when we say proposals were real, we found out that really everybody submitted proposals, they really meant it. They wasn't like they just threw some numbers out of laziness, that they actually were wanting to get the project. And they made a serious effort to do so. We found out that it is, and I think you all are aware of that there is a construction market. We're seeing, even with other local clients, we're starting to see an increase. As you recall, this is one of the first projects in the year, after the new year, that were out for proposals. And we're seeing in other projects that's starting to reflect as well, not to the extent of ours. There is a Hurricane Harvey effect. That third-party cost estimate I spoke to, he said he spoke to a subcontractor association here in town, and they are warning him that they're considering increasing up to 20% markup because of labor shortages. It's happening a lot of what happened when there was the oil boom. Basically, they're paying double the cost in labor in Houston now, and it's really, really starting to hit up in Houston. And so what happens is we don't have the empirical evidence yet that they're starting to leave town, but they feel like that's going to happen sooner or later, and this is kind of what happened when the oil field went on. When there's more oil fields, people leave to go where the money is. He also ran some numbers for Katrina, and he said historical data for Katrina is an average of 22%. One of the contractors spoke to, he said there was absolutely no interest from roofers. They all have a lot of work to do, big projects, big re-roofing projects. So he had to go get a roofer that he's really never heard of, that meets the qualifications, but it seems like it's starting to be slim pickings in some of the subcontractors in general. Now, let me go over the numbers. It can give you an idea what we found out.
Mr. Pettis,
Yes, sir.
Sir has a question, please.
You said all the
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
You said all the projects are real. I'm not asking for the detail.
Yes, sir.
But did Hybrids then figure out, I guess they made a mistake, is that it?
Well, honestly, from that standpoint, I don't think it was a matter of making a mistake. They just couldn't get bonded, and honestly, it was a matter of them almost wanting to buy the project. Sounds based on those conversations we had and with estimators that they went slow because they wanted to step into the market, so they really shoved their passes. They self-performed a lot of the work, which means they didn't have all the markups as a sub-consultant. That being said, it still doesn't explain the huge gap in there. But to answer your question, all the contractors seem to truly want the project. So there's something about this that maybe it's not a $9 million project, but maybe it's a 8.5, not the 6.1 we're thinking all along. So, and I'll show you in just a minute where we see, there's a discrepancy with the numbers, and let me show you exactly where that is. It's a little small, I don't know if everybody can see it, but I actually have a graph to go with it, hopefully that'll help. And here there were, as you can see, there's some ups and downs. There's some things we were down, some things we were over. But the things we were over, particularly 4 items, which I'll get in just a minute, were way over, which caused us to get real apprehensive about that. The red lines is 100%. In other words, anything close to the red line is double of what it should have been, or compared to the this is comparing to the architect's estimator. So we have metals. As you can tell, metals was at 126%. Finishes was 98%. There was the electrical at 80%, and at 132% was the earthwork. As you can tell, I don't have all the spec sections here. Basically, I went through the comparison and saw, okay, anything over 100,000 or very close to it. Let's see where we are with those about where the discrepancy is more than 100,000. And this is what I got. You had a question, Mr. Russell?
I cost delta.
Yes,
That's
sir.
246, comma 431. That's a comma, and we're talking 246 million.
Right here, no, 246,000.
Oh, and so you put in 3 decimals for cents, which generally we're looking for 2.
You're right.
Oh, okay.
That's my fault.
Okay, well, I was just sort of curious as to.
No, you're right. That's the way the numbers were provided, and I just cut and pasted them, and I should have been more careful about that. But it is thousands. It is thousands.
Okay, so it's only $246,000.
Yes, sir. But it boils down to, when you get to the bottom part, which is a 54% to million as far as the average. So it's that particularly those 4 areas are.
Well, then, if they're in that, then why didn't they get the bond? If it's all the costs are real, why couldn't they get the bond?
Because the discrepancy was so big between that low one and the high one.
So in other words, the bonding company looked at the difference, not saying whether they could or couldn't do it.
Right, and honestly, we didn't get any, Mr. Gallardo, you got the call, or you actually called them, right? You didn't get much detail. They basically just said, no, the bonding company, where we drawing our, so we really don't know many details. If they ran another estimate, we don't know if just they got cold feet, the bonding company. Like I said last time, I don't blame the bonding company because the odds are against them.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't have the details.
We know that the #1 high bidder is using the low bidder's work in their proposal, right? So
A portion of it, yeah.
it's all.
So the bonding company didn't have an absolute area, we think, they didn't have an absolute to say, hey, you really missed it. What they're saying is that we're concerned about the big discrepancy and we don't want to take that risk.
Right, and the fact, also, don't forget, they haven't really done much in town at all. The general contractor work was always a sub, so I can see the bonding company getting nervous about that.
It's a shame that if it actually they could have done it.
Yes.
That's a shame we missed it.
Indeed. So, we developed a timeline how we propose to go from this point forward, see what we all think, if you think it's appropriate. So right now we have up here, it is now the northwest schedule. Here is our proposed northwest schedule. And what it does is, we're here right here, January 25th. We already spent 2 weeks analyzing. We're still, there's some people still with some phone calls back. We're still doing some due diligence on this. So we estimate about a week for that. In the meantime, we're starting tomorrow. The architect is coming by, the estimator is coming by, and we're gonna start really look hard at value engineering and see how that's gonna come about. We're gonna spend approximately 2 weeks on that. Then we propose to meet with the committee and the representatives from the college and see what they think about our proposal, what we're approaching, try to get as low as possible on this. And then, this was about 4 months, we figure about 4 months. This is assuming we don't do it. 4 weeks? I'm sorry, 4 weeks. 4 weeks, yeah, 4 months. Sorry, thank you. 4 weeks, assuming that it's not anything real major, that they'll indeed have to redesign it, have to redo some sheets, they'll have to redo some details, but not to the full extent that we have to totally redesign. Then we have the procurement, which will allow me a couple of months for that. And would start early June, end of May, early June. Now, your obvious question is gonna be, how does that compare with the other projects we have currently going? And this is what we have. We have Valle Verde here. They will be starting in March. And then we have Rio Grande starting late April. And this, by the way, already accounts for 2-week extension. We did give 2 weeks extension to our, that's because we really want to make sure we do all that due diligence in light of what happened. And here, the construction for Mission del Paso will be in May. So, well, you cannot, as you can tell, they're nicely staggered. It works out fine from that standpoint. Looking at the overall schedule, this is the original schedule. This is the proposed schedule, which means that you'd still, even when you finish here, you wouldn't be able to occupy the building for the spring semester. Here, you wouldn't be able to occupy the spring semester. In both cases, you'll be able to occupy for the fall semester. So, from this context, I think we're okay. The only thing we're a little bit obviously concerned about is the more you push down, the more is the possibility the numbers will go up. Because the market, we've been telling for everybody, this is hot right now, but it's going to get hotter and hotter. So as we go down, it's likely the numbers go up too. So we'll certainly have to be very careful in account for that. Yes, sir.
What was the original budget for Northwest?
6.1.
6.1.
Yes, sir.
So we're coming up with 9. Okay. Now, did the architect design to 6.1, conceptualize to 6.1, and transmit that to the people that bid on it?
It certainly was our impression, and also we knew we were going to be a little over.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew, but he was fixing the 300, 400,000 because we knew the site was so complicated.
Okay, but if it's like going to be that, was there any kind of communication between the architect and these people, and them coming back and saying, hey, do you really want to stick to 6?
And no, but I know the answer is no, because
Okay, so the architect was as surprised
we
as-
were all surprised. Yeah, it hit us all off guard.
But okay, so going forward,
Yes, ma'am.
my concern is that everyone's gonna go back to the drawing board as far as getting cost, more realistic cost estimates. I bet that they're gonna be as high as what these guys came back with.
And I
Right.
don't disagree.
And-
Probably.
And so, I mean, what are the architects or these other cost estimates, how are they going to lower the price if all these other guys are coming in so high and saying, this is what the price is? It's
Right.
almost like we're stuck between a rock and a hard spot.
To a certain extent, we are, but I do think it's worth to go ahead and do this exercise because, for example, and I'll give you an example that we were not aware of at all, was the fact that the architect was counting on some of the FF&E monies to use towards construction. And apparently, if the college allows us to do that, we can do that. So there's some money set aside there that we could invest on. Other things is, we're finding out there's things that we can't cut that make sense and still be able to bring the building to perform the function and not be an ugly building, still be an attractive building.
Shouldn't the architect be in at least consultation? Shouldn't there be some sort of communication between the architect and the people that are looking at it saying, hey, we can't come like this? Or is the architect just put it out there and total it? If that's the case, it seems to me that the architect should have a concept of what's coming. I mean, 5%, 10% maybe, but 50%.
Right, exactly, yeah. I
And
would,
if these people didn't have it, are we tied to stay there? Can we fire this architect and get another one that does a better job?
yeah, I'll go ahead, David, I'm sorry.
During the proposal process, there's a cone of silence, and they can't feedback like that. In some cases like this, we kind of wish they could feedback like that.
So we could be facing this whole problem all over again.
Don't believe so. And as far as letting the architect go, he's on the hook contractually to redesign. We want him part of the team. He understands the
So he's
project
not gonna
better.
cost us any more.
No. And that's what we think, and he's also part of the team. Let's keep this team together, let's work, together and get it and at least go through the exercises. What value engineering things, he's already ready to talk to us tomorrow about what value engineering he has. He knows what he has to do, he knows the task.
Well, the objective is a certain amount of square footage for lab and classroom space.
Correct. Instructional space, the first thing we're gonna discuss is don't affect instructional space affect, if you have to sacrifice some finishes to a point that's reasonable and acceptable to the college. And again, as Paulo said, we'll go through that, we'll figure out what the potential savings we think with our estimator, with both estimators again. And then, go back and make sure the college is okay with it. The faculty, the deans, make sure they're okay with the cuts we propose.
But what if the cost, the high costs are the metals and the three areas that Paul just highlighted, and those happen to be the classrooms and the labs, and they're not
They are.
necessarily the finishes, then, you know?
Yeah, and the metals is
And
the
I-
structure, basically, the
Right,
joists, the
exactly.
beams and.
Right, you can't, right.
Actually,
Cut back.
I'm sorry, the finishes will went the high ones. They've had the contractors.
Right, the finish was one of those high ones.
Really?
Finish, metals,
Oh,
the electrical and the site work. Site work being by far the
Yeah, the
biggest.
dirt work.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So that's a reason we immediately pulled, we have a bunch of civil engineers at our office, and two of them already, one did a take off immediately, to vet the numbers we had, to look at it. Another's looking at it like, can I not change the building? Can I, not change the size of the building? Can I just, is there a way to reduce the number of retaining walls? Is there a reasonable way of doing that?
We worked the site plan.
Exactly. Is there a smart way of doing that?
We went through a lot to get to agree on what it is that we wanted. What's the purpose of meeting with a committee? Because if you're just meeting with a committee to tell them what we're not gonna have, that's
Oh,
not acceptable.
no, and I agree, and
We
that
don't wanna
is-
have a Mickey Mouse product.
Right,
at
and that's
end.
the whole purpose to me with the committee, is exactly to do that. We're not gonna assume the committee's okay with it. So what we're gonna do, we bring some ideas to the table, but if the committee says, no, we're not willing to consider this, then we certainly will not do it.
But then again, those ideas coming to the table are different from what we originally agreed upon, and the board agreed on it once the committee endorsed it. So now you're taking it back to the committee, so they can agree on a
Right.
cheaper model, so that.
And I understand your concern. As a matter of fact, we brought that up to the dean, and the dean fortunately was very understanding on that. To a certain extent, that looks like we may have to do some more sacrifices, although some of the things we can do, it's marginal. In other words, you won't really, maybe not as expensive as light fixtures. Maybe we had too expensive light fixtures. Does that make sense? Maybe some things were a little more than should be. And let me tell you why I think that as well. All these, the two early projects we had were $100 tracking at 180, between 180 and 190. This one is tracking at 190. So it's pretty much in line what we had. And what it tells me is, first of all, there's something really wrong, but also what made it go up? And maybe some of the things we have are not as cheap as we thought. Maybe the light fixtures, and actually I know that for a fact that the light fixtures are way more expensive than.
Oh, the light fixtures.
That's,
It's the nice, like, that's the fixtures that make things nice, is the problem.
yeah, but we can make it look nice with
But
nice
this is
other
a
fixtures.
Southwest
I mean, there's
just
not
make
an
it
exclusive on
look
nice light fixtures. We can actually get some nice light fixtures.
Well, this is the Southwest, just make bigger windows.
Oh, and by the way, so funny you say that, because actually, that's one of the
Funny
things they
how
picked on. We have too much glass. We have too much glass, and that's
It
another
makes
thing.
the
We
cost
can.
go up, right?
Pardon?
Makes the cost go up or down?
It costs a while.
Right,
More glass. So one of the things we can do is reduce, in a wise way, reduce the size of the opening and save that way. It's a combination. We're gonna have to work at it hard. We're gonna have to go really.
Because we don't wanna end up with a dungeon-looking building.
Oh, I wouldn't want you to come up with that. No, absolutely not.
It's
You
just-
know,
is
the
this
cost
gonna-
of wax will go up, we can't buy candles.
But I mean, is this,
Oh, okay, we won't consider that one.
But see, my decision is that, okay, so we all agreed on, you all were hired to get this negotiated and put it through and all that. We had our meetings and all that. Now the problem is with you. You all need to fix it. We all
Absolutely,
agree on what we
absolutely.
want.
And I agree with you. We do need to fix it, and hopefully we
But
will
not
fix
fix
it.
it by going back to the committee, so you tell them, well, they can afford that, so now you're gonna have to settle for this.
We-
Well, of course,
we are not
between
go- well-
getting anything and this.
No, I understand what you're
saying.
saying. We're not gonna go to the community and say, hey, you're gonna have to have this. We'll never do that. What we'll say is, will we consider this? Will this be like an equivalent, acceptable to you?
Either that or nothing. What do you think they're gonna say? Well, I guess we'll take it.
Well,
No. That's not a game we wanna engage in. You all are commissioned to
well, we're
give
trying.
us what we asked for, the
Absolutely.
prices that you all proposed.
Well, we're certainly being pragmatic about it, and then, just like I said, everything was tracking to happen right. So this was a surprise for us, and now we have to fix
It shouldn't have been,
it.
because you all knew what was on the table. You all knew
Okay,
that
go
the
ahead.
districts are getting bonds left and right.
Right,
And so, I obviously understand your concern. We are not a contractor. We don't hold the contracts of the construction.
But you hold the oversight.
And we're doing all due diligence to look at the oversight. All of our clients are having similar problems that we're having. The city of El Paso, all of their bond programs are in deep trouble because they budgeted many years ago and they haven't been able to update those budgets. School districts are beginning to see problems, as you well know. We presented multiple ways of building a project early on to staff and I believe to the board as well. Procurement methodologies, for instance. Some procurement methodologies all of them have pros and cons, right? A CM at risk basically allows you to have a biddable project because the contractor is engaged during the construction from the beginning with the designer, aligning itself to a price. It's called the guaranteed maximum price. And it's practiced by most school districts here in town, including Socorro. That doesn't mean that you get a less expensive project. That means that you don't have a potential surprise at the end. And we talked about it, but the budgets were quite tight from the beginning, and we decided collectively as a team that the best route to go was through CSP because, as I said, and this is documented. We could give you data. A CMR risk project is much more pricey than a competitive SIP proposal because the bids they bid early on basically. They just give you their multiplier. They give you contractors win on just qualifications alone pretty much, as opposed to price. So we have I don't know if you present, I don't think so, but we are looking at multiple ways of trying to address this issue on this project and try to bring it up to your standards and the budget. Are we gonna get to 6.1? It is unlikely. And so before we do any construction or hire anyone else, we're gonna present to you some potential options for you to decide whether we build a $7 million project or table it for the next bond if there is one, or do something smaller perhaps. And so that's obviously gonna be your decision, but we cannot control, ECM doesn't have the power to control construction markets. The construction, it hit us now. It's multiple months after Harvey. Indications are that Harvey is now hitting El Paso, both with labor and costs of materials. I wish I had that knowledge and power. I would be quite rich if I was able to bet that. But we're doing our due diligence. And I'm not minimizing the challenge. I'm just saying we're doing all the best, practicing all the best practices, if you will, to try to have a successful project. I'm not sure if that sort of addresses the concern. But no one in the world can promise that you will have a project at a certain price, unfortunately, because we're not bidding, we're not putting the money. Contractors do.
So our next Facility and Finance Committee is gonna be on Tuesday, February 15th. What are we gonna ask?
Maybe 15, let me see where we'll be on February 15th.
Will you have the recommendations available for us then?
February 15th?
Okay.
No, probably no.
No, sir. And the reason for this is, so we have the challenge, and we're talking a significant redesign, because we're $2 million off, right? And again, 2 months ago, we had two projects that were right on track. And so there's a disconnect that we'll continue to analyze. What he proposed here, and maybe he went on it too quickly, is to basically do value engineering for 2 weeks, which we're engaging now, and it's a multi-pronged value engineering. We're talking to contractors, we're talking to subcontractors as well, we're talking to the architect, we have our own estimator who's also going to propose alternative.
But no, real quickly, I mean, what is different from that than what you guys did beforehand? That's what I don't understand. Didn't you guys do
Yes.
all that what you're saying you're gonna do now before?
Yes, we have continuously done it. Now we're going to obviously put a lot, emphasis on it, knowing that we have a price that we receive.
A delta.
A delta, correct. A delta, you see, obviously, our effort has been to give you the most you can afford. I mean, that's always been the best bang for the buck, right? You wanna have, of course, you don't wanna have signature buildings, well, perhaps you do, and we have a couple, but we were trying to get as much as we can. We had a challenge with the architect, and this is not about assigning blame or anything, but we had a disparity on the fee on the estimates with the architect. And this is a normal procedure. You always do with the architects, because they have estimators, we have estimators, and they're not working off the same databases, everybody has their own opinions, so there was a disparity. In the other two projects, there was also a disparity, but our estimator was always on the high end, and so we were in line. This one, it exceeded that. So the architect had a significant,
So the architect went with the
Three.
high-end estimator going, oh, we're gonna do all, or,
the other way
It
around.
was the
He was
opposite.
very
It was the
low.
opposite.
oh, okay.
He was-
Oh, I
His
see.
own estimator was
$3.1 million
low.
low.
Oh, I got you.
You see, we were also lower, but not as low as he was. And so, again, there's this situation, so we're going to go through some steps, and we wanna take our time to do it more exhaustively. We're bringing more resources to actually do it, as I said. We already do it, making sure that the quantities were right, some of these things, so that we don't present to you something that is not viable, obviously. I'm not sure if that answers. So, and also because of these charts, let me put it this way. We don't wanna interfere with the other three that we have. We have three coming, right? And they're already underway. And so if we spend our time, analyze it, have some more discussions with the college, with you all about options and whatnot, that will put us hopefully out of the other three. And if we can shorten it a couple weeks or a month, we will. But we don't wanna just rush through the process, and
So your recommendation right now is to push,
that is correct, sir.
and to push into June, go forward with Valle Verde, the large classroom lab, go forward with the Rio Grande campus, and go forward with Mission, and then come back to Northwest.
Correct. The bidding of these three projects will also allow us to know how much money there is left on the program.
Actually, if I can remind you, one of the things that we haven't just been focusing on Northwest, actually almost the contrary. And even this morning, I talked to Jorge Mora with Miradas Mora, and I keep on, if you check, almost to a point where I'm annoying, but I've been calling, we're constantly doing these checks, and e-guarantee, one of the things is followed, first of all, it's a simple project, not much site work, no parking lots, and all this, but if you still check, they said, yeah, I talked to Bayless, our estimate. So there's still a lot of, and PSC probably even more. Just yesterday, we've been meeting nonstop with them because we're very worried, granted, we do want to solve this issue with Northwest, but we're very worried about the other ones. And so we're working very hard on those as well. PSC, Park Hill, Smith and Cooper, they're the architects of Rio Grande.
Rio Grande.
Right, so this awful news that we got here put us on the alert for the other three projects, so we're doing our due diligence.
Out of this, are we gonna have the same, general contractors bid?
Probably for the Rio Grande and Valle Verde, we probably get a little more of the higher ones because
For
Northwest?
Yeah, for Northwest.
No, probably we won't get like the CF Jordans and the Suns, and we won't.
No, I mean, the people, we had 5 bids.
Yes, sir.
Were those same 5 people bidding on this? or
I
do
would
we
certainly
know?
hope so. And
So
we'll
it'll be open all over again.
exactly. And since it's open now, we'll contact them as
But
well,
every-
encourage them to do
But
that.
whatever we can talk, or code of silence, or whatever it is, everybody's gonna know that when we say 6+ million it generally means 6+ million, not, so if they come up with 9 million,
Right,
then they
right.
got a problem.
Well, let me say something. So a contractor will bid, they will bid what, they're committing with their bid, right? So they're gonna bid what they feel it costs plus whatever
Yeah,
profit
what
they're
they
looking
think,
at.
what's.
They're not gonna sacrifice, unless they're really wanting to do business with you, they won't sacrifice their earnings.
But on the backside, there's still, but people will know that that's,
Yes.
that's the target.
I'm sorry, no, go ahead.
There's another thing that we've been discussing with staff and we can further discuss further on is through the CSP process, you give a certain percentage of selection on the cost. So cost is not 100%. Cost is only, the way that we have it set up for every project is 45%. So that is also, again, an encourager for the better companies to participate, but also a discourager on low bidding a project, right? Because you have to play with those. If you've had a business before, you play with those cards that you're given. One option for this particular one, or even for all of them, is to raise that percentage on cost to make it more appealing for them to sharpen the pencil. Again, these are market questions that are, we're experts, we're professionals on the matter, but it's a,
Well,
it's a
one thing
difficult
that's not
question.
gonna make it any easier, the city is gonna go out with the sports arena. Yeah, so.
Apparently. And even if the same
sorry.
companies are not
Mr.
participating.
Portis has a comment, and then I think we
Yes.
need to wrap this up
Sure.
to go on to, thank you.
Just a quick question, when a company proposes a contract or an offer, what is the timing for them to secure the bonding?
It's once we won't sign, go ahead, Ruben, I'm sorry, no, you're good. We won't be able to sign a contract until they have the bonds into effect, correct? So they'll have, once we notify them, okay, we were selected, as soon as they were selected, Mr. Gallardo here would notify him.
Typically, we'll call them in the next day or within 2 business days of the board meeting. And we give them a draft contract that they can then take to their surety to get the bonding. Some companies have very good relationships with the surety, so we get it back in 1 or 2 days. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks. But we won't issue the notice to proceed until we have the two bonds, payment bond and performance bond.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
So you're looking for direction on whether the board wants you to move in? to go in this
Definitely, I'd love to have that, yes, sir.
I think the board is, consensus is that we move forward with your recommendation.
Yes, sir.
I don't think anybody else has anything else that we can add to it right now.
Just don't be surprised when the numbers stay the same.
And then we're not.
And then
no
we
longer
don't
looking at
hack
delivering
everything.
ahead of schedule.
This schedule,
is
thank
big.
you.
That's a good
No,
point,
you
Dr.
go ahead.
Hammond. It's a 360-day project, so if they went June, yeah, there's the timeline.
So.
We're still okay on that.
We're still okay, and actually the Scots is probably okay, because you still won't be able to get in until the fall semester, so. I think we'd do, but
November
that's
19 is what we were looking at for everything.
Yes.
Save Rio Grande, and Rio Grande wasn't due.
Dollars
City
size
was-
are our issues.
And I think you can see the passion from our side,
Absolutely.
the concern.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It has nothing to do with just doubting ECM.
No.
It has more, a concern about where we are right now in the project and what can happen, so.
Certainly
But on
understandable.
the other
yeah.
hand, we still have the expectation that you guys will come up with a better
Yes.
product.
We certainly
Yeah.
make every effort to do that, yes.
Because, you know, we've got hopefully in the near future, another big project coming up with another campus. And we're gonna be looking not only at the contractors, but at who's gonna have oversight on the project itself.
We're putting our best effort, we're putting our best minds to it. We're, not despairing any resources, to come with the best answer. And so these things just take a little bit of time because again, we're consulting, we're talking, we're running the ideas through staff. So that's why we think that it's best to wait a little bit. Let's see how these at least we'll get the first one on the 22nd of February, the first next bid. That'll give us some indication for sure. Contractors might be different, but subs, sometimes they're the same, so
Exactly.
we'll get some indication of how it's going.
Doug, so your indications that we go on with this
My
we have an and nothing's been proposed as an alternative. So, I mean, we have to take this because nobody's been able to figure out what else we could do that would be acceptable.
Well, let me speak to that. So the alternatives are this. So we completely table the project and we don't use those funds at all and we can use them for something else?
No.
No, we
Yeah,
do that.
My recommendation would
Like
be.
I said, we haven't discussed that alternative.
Correct. Well, I'm just kind
It's
of
not an
saying,
alternative.
So the other alternative would be to bid it right away as is, and then we're not gonna get anything different. So
That's not an
what
alternative.
we're requesting that is for you all to give us a chance to come up with a redesign, along with the architect and contractors and the community, do a little bit more research, and then we have a chance. I mean, we're not committing to doing the project.
And
And
you
how do
figure
you
out
know
how to
that
work
we
with this
wouldn't get
cul-de-sac.
a different outcome?
As I said, because we're going to, in an intelligent way, try to, it's called value engineering, right? The process is value engineering, which means you try to keep the value and you re-engineer to keep that same value proposition.
Reduce the scope, yeah.
So that's what we're intending to do. Again, at the end of that value proposition, we're probably gonna give you with some confidence where we think we're gonna be at.
Okay. And I think that's the option we all agree upon we need to go into. We need to go on to budget and Ms. Shaughnessy, but before we do that, Pam, would you call us to executive? And I'll ask ECM to stay, and Ruben, please.
Time is 4:40 p.m. At any time during the meeting, Board of Trustees may conduct executive or closed session pursuant to Chapter 5 of Texas Government Code for one or more of the following reasons. Consultation with its attorney to seek legal advice or consultation regarding pending or contemplated litigation or for any purpose authorized by law, discussion about the value or transfer of real property, discussion about a prospective gift or donation, consideration of specific personnel matters, discussion about security personnel or devices, or discussion of certain economic development matters. The board may also announce that we're going to executive session on any items on the agenda if the subject matter is permitted for a closed session by provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. The time is 4:49 p.m. The board is returned to regular session. Oh, we have Ms. Shaughnessy? Behind you. Oh. And I'm on fire. I know. Terrorist. Okay.
I'm on?
Ms. Velveteen.
Ms. Velveteen.
Whenever you're ready, Chair. Let the record reflect the chair is now ready to start.
Good morning. Pam, can you come to this?
I already did.
Oh, I told us waiting for her. I'm sorry, Ms. Shaughnessy.
Not a problem.
Your half hour is dwindled just a bit.
I will try to go as quickly as possible. I'll be able to skip over quite a few slides, actually, just for you. So good afternoon, Mr. Fierro, Dr. Serrata, members of the board, and distinguished audience. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This actually is really more of a briefing on the budget development process that is going to be starting in February to kind of help you with some of the decision making that is going to be occurring between now and the time that you are adopting the budget in August. As you know, every year is always challenging. Every year there's always something that pops up that we're having to consider. And so the gist of this briefing is also to give you some information on what we're planning on presenting to the Tuition and Fees Committee, because this is going to be the fall of 2018 is going to mark the second implementation cycle for a two-year tuition plan that was proposed 2 years ago, that has been working for us in the last 2 years. So real quick, I'm just going to go over the 17-18 adopted budget, the projected revenue, and I'm just going to give you an idea of the slides, but for the sake of time, I think I will jump into the budget development process, some of the strategies we need to look at, some of the things that we are facing into the next biennium. So you already have this information in your packet. This shows you the projected revenue by source. This year's budget is $138.6 million. And as you can see, property taxes takes the lead at $58.2 million. That is followed very closely by tuition and fees at $42.1 million. And then third, state appropriation at $31.7 million, down to 22.94%. Yes, sir.
Property tax, tuition, I can see that, but Dr. Serrata, your estimate, how much, what's the plus or minus on state appropriation? I mean, that's the big one. I mean, the others, we have some say-so about state.
So, all estimates currently are between 6.8 and $10 billion shortfall at the state level. That's initial. We're all waiting to see what the comptroller comes forward with. That won't be until the end of the year, until the end of the fiscal year going into next year. The comptroller's estimates will be key, Mr. Uxer. There's good news. I mean, the price of oil is $65 a barrel right now, or at least as of Tuesday of this week. Those help, and they could potentially mitigate some of these pieces. There's other things, having discussed the chair of the Democratic Caucus, having him present to us yesterday in Austin. There's other things that ideology is preventing our legislature from moving forward on Medicaid expansion, which would be about $10 billion annually if we did that in our state, which means that other resources could be utilized for things like education, but there doesn't appear to be a stomach to do that.
Your gut feeling, just real quick, your gut feeling is we might lose as much as $1 million?
Oh, I think we could lose more than $1 million.
Okay, but we're not gonna be above 31.7.
No.
No,
Okay, so.
probably not.
And the unfortunate part, there's really no way to gauge that, I mean, realistically until the middle or end of session, right?
Correct.
I mean,
But
we'll
on the
hear-
other hand, what we need to say is that if that's going down and that's the total budget, then we need to look at what it is that we may participate in, which are the other two sides.
That's correct.
So.
And that's really what we're-
All I'm saying is that, hey, where are the pluses and minuses?
Right, no, that's a very good point, and we're coming up to a point where we may only end up with one side,
Yeah.
and we'll know again at the decision. Okay, sorry, Shansi.
That's okay.
You see, you have plenty of time left.
Again, you've seen those slides in the past. This is a great chart that again that shows the shift of where state funding used to be the major source of revenue, where now it is the third major source of revenue, with again your property tax leading the pack, and then followed by tuition and fees. And again, you can also see the trend of enrollment from the last several years, where your enrollment has been going up, but your state funding has been decreasing. This is actually very telling, because this is exactly what's happening with us right now in terms of enrollment and unemployment rate history. So I don't know if you saw the article in the newspaper a couple of days ago, but all-time low in October, 3.3% unemployment. And certainly that explains quite a bit of why is it our enrollment, as in spite of our dual credit enrollment going up, and that makes sense because they are high school students, they're not in the workforce. Our regular student population is actually in the workforce most likely, and that's what's probably creating that downturn in enrollment. So this is a very, very good chart that shows you those kind of trends. You can see in 2011, 2012, when we were at the height of the recession, and the unemployment rate was 10.6%, and look at our enrollment. It was just very, very high. So local property tax rate history, that kind of shows you over time. Again, we have a cap of 15 cents. We're at 14.1638 cents per $100 valuation. And that just kind of shows you the history of how we've been doing with our tax base that has been growing. It's been kind of stabilizing over time for the last several years. This coming year is actually a reappraisal year. So we may see some increases here in tax base. And of course, as you know, anytime that there's a reappraisal year, and there is an increase in tax base, you're going to be seeing our effective tax rate going down. And that certainly will help us a little bit if we keep our fingers crossed, like Dr. Serrata is doing, absolutely. So we'll see and we won't know that until July.
The top line is our effective tax rate, correct?
It's the current tax rate. Remember that the board approved a 4% increase over the effective tax rate. Our effective tax rate was 13.6 cents per $100 valuation, and we increased it by 4%. So the 14.1638 is our current tax rate. That was a 4% increase over the effective tax rate. Our valuation right now is $41.1 billion. So if there is a reappraisal, not taking into consideration any new property, that tax rate may go down somewhat, assuming that the tax base goes up in valuation. Resident tuition, I guess same history here as you can see for the last 2 years, and that reflects for 16, 17, and 17, 18, the the tuition rate schedule that we adopted to stay pretty much stable for 2 years. And so currently our tuition for 12 credit hours is $1,368, and that does include the general use fee of $20 per credit hour. Those are the expenditures by function, and you do have that information, have it broken down in by expense category, because it's something that everybody can understand a little bit better in terms of, you can see how it's broken down between your salaries, your staff salaries, faculty salaries, benefits, which is a big chunk of our budget in proportion to our total budget, and then everything else. I do have a detail that is at the end of the presentation. The reason I put this chart over here, because this is so telling. This is something that we don't have as much control over in terms of the state funding us. Right now we are funded at 50% for both health insurance and TRS for the retirement benefits. As you can see, the health insurance takes really the big share of that's about over half of our budgeted benefits. So budget development process, this is the time of the year where Laura Tellez is starting losing some hair because she's, scratching her head and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to fund a budget of $138 million. It's going to be starting very soon. We have an assessment of revenue for the current fiscal year, so this is something obviously that we always look at. This is the basis for the revenues for next year. And one of the things that you need to be aware of is that the fiscal year 18-19 is the second year of the biennium, therefore we have no additional funding from the state. So we pretty much have to rely on either tuition or taxes to fund any additional needs that may come our way. Yes, sir.
Bonnie, what's the chance that they'll come back, you said the chance they'll come back and say, okay, this is what you're going to get for this biennium, but it's not really? No, what are the chances that the state will come back and ask for something back?
This year, there is no change.
Okay.
This current, not until the next legislative year. We don't anticipate that we're in a situation where the state has to cut.
We're not.
Yes. It's next allocation that they're gonna allocate less.
So of course, we're still experiencing a little bit of a challenge because we do have an enrollment decline in the non-dual credit student population, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to our tremendous economy that is working very well for El Paso. Excuse me, ma'am?
That's a huge challenge, not a little bit of a challenge.
But nothing
I was
we
being
cannot
very
handle is what
optimistic.
Dr.
Yes.
Graham meant.
Okay.
Nothing that Ms. Chauncey cannot handle.
No, it's actually going over there, with enrollment and tuition.
You're not listening.
Yes, he is.
Well,
You're
good-
listening, right, sir?
I was reading.
Better pay attention.
So the good news with enrollment decline, though, we do have a decrease in revenue potentially in tuition, but we also have a decrease in cost. So we do try to mitigate that. So that's why we review, and Mr. Smith can tell you that I do have regular discussions with him and say, you know what, you have an enrollment decline, so it means that you have enrollment management is very important because obviously we have to mitigate the number of sections we are offering, and that does decrease the cost of instruction. Fiscal year 18-19 budget, expenditure budget is going to be based on the rollover of the 17-18 budget. We do roll over. However, there is a process for reallocation within our executive level. So each executive level is tasked in reviewing their budget, and if they have additional needs within that budget, then they can reallocate. It's incumbent upon them to look at their budget, see where they can reallocate funds that they may not need anymore for whatever reason. Additional requests, as usual, are going to be considered only for essential needs. So no wish list, or you can do a wish list, but most likely you're not going to get a wish list. And we've been doing this for years, unfortunately. We have to evaluate unfunded needs, benefits, and other overhead costs. Some of them we don't have any choice. We have to fund.
Like what do you have as an example of unfunded needs?
So,
Benefits?
well, the benefits, for example, as we hire more personnel, we're going to have additional benefits that are associated with that personnel that is being hired. We currently do have vacant positions that are under recruitment, so as we bring those people on board, it's going to obviously raise the cost of benefits.
We pay 100% of their,
We pay 100%,
Yes,
not for the dependents.
right, okay.
They do, yeah, for the employee, with the state paying 50%.
And that part is mandated also, the portion?
Yes, sir, it is mandated.
But I guess I go back to the benefits, they're really not unfunded needs, right? I mean, they're.
Well, they could be unfunded as they are not in the budget. If we are incurring additional personnel costs That's create more benefits costs because we're having to pick up 50% of the health insurance at the retirement. So it is unfunded in that
By the
current
state.
budget. Well, it's not funded by the state, but it's also not funded in the current budget. So I'm having to add to it. So when I come before you, let's say, you know, the next, once we have evaluated more or less how much our budget is for benefits based on our current expenses, and we say, okay, we anticipate that we're gonna have this much for health insurance. This is the budget, but this is the cost. We're keeping track of that cost on a monthly basis. And if it exceeds what our budget is, I'm gonna have to come back to you and say, for example, back in 17-18, we had to add $150,000. No, I'm sorry. Well, what is that? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. So, and Mr. Yessi has just reminded me that last time when I came before you, when we adopted the budget, additional funding request, which is directly associated to what we're talking about here, we needed graduation expenses, tax collection fees had gone up, the central appraisal fees. We don't have really a control over that. So the Central Appraisal District meets every March. They have a preliminary budget, and they're telling us, and by the way, your share of the central appraisal fee is going to be this much. Where in the budget, instead of having, let's say, $150,000, we only have $140,000. So that means I need to come before you and say I need an additional $10,000. So that's what I mean by unfunded. It is not currently included in the budget. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you come to us, where is our pots to get that money?
There you go.
So we have a pot of money in a sense that we can go into salary savings. So at the end, like Mr. Yes, during the fiscal year, keeps track of all the salaries. And so we have positions that become vacant. Let's say the incumbent is making $50,000 and we're refilling the position at $40,000, you're gonna have a $10,000 savings. And so we can use that towards funding those additional needs.
But we don't know.
Does that make sense?
When will we have a better grasp or idea of how many?
Probably, okay, so,
How many positions that might?
okay, so, let me see, this one is, so right here under the budget development process, so you see under the March 9th, the budget request from all the executive level are going to be due to the budget office. Mr. Yes and her office, not all by herself, compiles all those requests and then arrives at the very end at a total budget. And that total budget, including salaries, is probably going to be lower than the $138.6 million that was adopted. So sometime April, May timeframe, we'll have a better idea. So when I come before you, let's say in May at a budget workshop, we'll have an idea of how much that is. We compare what the adopted budget is versus what the preliminary budget for 18-19 is, and most of the time it's going to be a difference about, let's say, $200,000-$300,000. And that helps us then going into the next fiscal year and fund what is currently unfunded. Does that make sense?
Could you please make a note that we're gonna start having Chauncey give us these presentations more and more, that we schedule them on days where we only have finance and facilities and finance committee, and that way we stay late. It doesn't really put anybody out except for
So like on a
next
like
week.
March
When there's no
29th.
board meeting.
Right, when there's no board meeting.
I'm sorry, March 21st would be, there's no board meeting, it's just a facilities
Right.
meeting.
So at 5:30, whatever time we get scheduled for Chauncey. Well, actually, we can schedule at 5. It doesn't matter what time we start, right? We just will posting with. Does that make sense? No.
Okay, so let's see here. So earlier, and I just touched base on that because evaluate budgeting savings that relate to enrollment in vacant position is very important. It's
But
part,
Chauncey,
yes?
It's not, it's already 5,
Okay.
5:06.
Can we go through
And
really
it's,
quick?
no, it's not fair to you or your team that we rush through this.
Almost done.
We're not posted till, we don't start the other meeting till 5:30.
Oh, I thought it started at 5.
No,
Oh, okay.
5:30.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
relax, okay.
I'll be in the hallway.
I can go really quick.
No, don't, I just, I thought we were
having
Yes.
to do this.
kind of sending
Yeah.
the wrong email. I'm sorry.
Okay. So,
Going back to your other one, the evaluation of the budget savings related to enrollment and vacant positions. That, on that particular, when do you work on that? You're working on it now, or you're gonna?
we're gonna start working on that now.
But we
So-
won't know until March the 9th.
Yeah, March, well, probably May timeframe is
Oh.
closer, because remember that Ms. Tellez is starting, getting all the budget requests, she's reviewing all the salaries, all the positions, and so they're
Well,
compiling all that
I know this is a
information.
vacant position, but the enrollment, shouldn't we already have a good idea of what that's?
But not necessarily for next fiscal year. So usually I mean, we already know if we have budget savings due to enrollment during the fiscal year, that's true.
Or a budget deficit due to lower enrollment?
Well, we don't have a budget deficit, and we may have less revenue coming in, but in terms of expense, we don't, because again, we don't spend that money that is earmarked for, let's say, for faculty, we don't spend it. If we don't make, if the section
We will have a
doesn't make, we
balance.
don't make it.
We
Just don't want
always
us
do,
to act like
don't
a
worry.
Fed.
No, we will not spend beyond our means.
Of course not, we never have, we're fine.
We're not gonna cause a college to.
So looking at revenue projection for this current fiscal year, okay? State appropriation, wow, we got an additional $10,000 because there was a slight adjustment to our appropriation, so we did get $10,000, and that's gonna be.
10,000?
Yeah, so a whole $10,000, actually $10,458, that will also get that same amount for next year. If I just concentrate on the main sources of revenue, tuition and fees, right now is projected for the end of the fiscal year to be about $41.6 million, or a decrease of $502,000. And again, this relates to the enrollment decline that we talked about. And by the way, yes, sir.
Out of curiosity, I realize it's a small amount, but why do we project state appropriations to be more when every indication are that the very best we can hope for is stay even?
Well, sir, it's for this current fiscal
Yeah,
year.
this one's actual.
This is
one's
actual.
They actually cut us,
Yeah.
believe it or not, another $10,000 check.
This is not for, this is not.
So we actually, this year will actually be 31.8?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
So this is a revenue projection for this fiscal year, Mr. Axer. And then these revenue projections are gonna be the
Well,
basis.
I understand, it's just that I did not know that they cut it as another $10,458.
Well, we when we received our appropriation, we were told, and by the way, you are, because there was an adjustment due to, they look at our certified hours, and they, if there's an adjustment, they let every community college know. So we got
Fine.
$10,000, yeah. Yes, sir. So, again, this is going to be the basis for, remember, this was the first year of the biennium, 17-18 was the first year of the biennium. Second year of the biennium, this is what we can expect, 31.8 on state appropriation, assuming they don't cut us, as you know, you were maybe concerned about earlier. Tuition and fees, again, that's based on your credit, your continuing education, all your fees, except for general use fee, because that is earmarked to a different fund. And that also includes the dual credit billing that we are now, assessing the high schools who have our own faculty teach their high school students, their dual credit students. So by mitigating that extra money, we get about $700,000 a year. We are able to reduce that decrease in tuition by about $502,000. It is, though, offset by other income, $809,000, and this is because the interest market is doing so well. Well, better, let's put it this way. We're not at 5%. We're certainly not far from that. But at least we've been able to, thanks to some of the investments that we have, and we're invested very conservative. Very conservative. We are not allowed to go into the stock market. We are not allowed to do, for example, derivatives or anything like that is high risk. We are very conservative, and our main goal is protection of our principal. So we always have to protect our principal. So our interest rate is about, how much is it right now, Fern?
1.36.
1.36. So 1.36. Remember that our bonds, the interest for the bonds is not reflected in here. Remember, for our bond proceeds, it's 1.11. Remember, we invested into a flex repo, and we get 1.11, and we committed to that flex repo, so we're not able to make more than that. But the general fund, our amounts, our interest income is actually growing. So that's how we were able to adjust it accordingly. So when we mitigate all of these, variation here, in total, we are looking at additional revenue about close to $300,000 for this year. And I've been very conservative in property taxes here. I am pretty confident that actually in property tax revenue, we get a little bit more than that. But we never know what refund is gonna hit us. And so I have in the budget about $500,000 reserved in case we get a refund. We have to give refunds. We have to give refunds, not that we get a refund. But I expect that at the end of this fiscal year, the property tax revenue will be higher than that. So right now it's basically break even.
Could you go work for the architects and
We need her.
teach them? No, I'm just saying, or go give them a lesson on how to like budget or estimate. So that we have it just at Shaughnessy.
We've had our little conversations already.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Because I've been questioning to the information, yes. So in total revenue, we're looking at a $138.9 million, and that's going to be the basis for revenue projections for next year. So on the surface, it looks like we have an extra $300,000 to start
But we don't.
18-19.
But we don't.
But of course, we have other things that are going to
It's already
probably-
spent. Wait, real quick, just, I'm sorry, Ms. Shaughnessy, does, our current budget is what,
138.6.
Oh, okay.
So how do we plan for next year? So we know that we have several things that are going to be, that we're going to have to address. So it is the second year of the biennium, no additional funding from the state. This year is going to be starting spring mini-semester. And we really need to work really hard to bring, so no pressure for Dr. Gonzalez, but it is a base year, and assuming that there is even a decrease in state funding for the next biennium, they're still going to be looking at our enrollment. So that could be a double whammy if we are not able to bring that enrollment up. So, yes, sir.
Excuse me. I think this is for you, a suggestion. You see that chart, tuition, everything else? That looks, it says, God, we're raising everything. In recruiting, put a chart up with Southwest University, put a chart up with Western Tech to show our little bars down here and their tuition bar, they can't even get it on the page. Let's start being aggressive and telling the people if we want to enroll, where are you gonna spend money? Yeah, we get the same certification, we do everything else. It just costs you 5 times out.
That's marketing.
Whoever it is, listen.
We will continue to market and we'll continue to let students know that we are by far the best value in higher ed in our region. We will make sure we do that. We're gonna be
You
much
look at
more.
the kids in high school and they look at numbers. I mean, they look at, so let's put numbers out there. Yeah, that's right. But let's put it out there saying, hey, yeah, do you wanna be working on your job and, for 3 years and still owe $20,000? By the way, I just got through talking about a month ago to a young lady who was taking an x-ray of my foot. Yeah. Her boyfriend went through community college and everything was paid for and he was buying a car. She was still paying off her loans and he wouldn't help her.
They're not married yet.
So,
how's your
So
foot?
to say a couple things. We're collecting data, using research to kind of answer some questions. So there's always more than one reason why our enrollment's not where it's at. There's like 25 reasons, and we're looking at which ones can we target that will give us the most impact. And so we have lots of things in the works. One of the things that we're discovering right now, though, is that those students who graduate from high school, who don't go on to any higher ed, when they start working, their managers who are assigning their hours basically send them the message, this is the culture that we're trying to fight. The culture is, if you're available anytime, I'm gonna give you hours. If you tell me you need time off Tuesdays and Thursdays to go to college, you're not getting hours. So then they're saying, okay, I need to pay my bills. So I'm gonna drop my classes so I can tell the person who's scheduling the hours, I can work at any time. So the higher ups in those companies, they know the idea of going to college is important, But somehow when it gets to the person, all those people that are scheduling hours, they're just trying to make sure they have as much flexibility as possible. And so we're gonna have conversations with those companies that hire a lot of those folks near our campuses to try to change that culture.
That's a great idea.
So, but this is an involved process that is gonna require your help too as a board to facilitate those conversations.
Mike, I guess my point is that let's start robbing the people from Southwest and Western Tech. I mean, if they're going there, let's,
Right. I was,
yeah.
you know, I was going to mention, do we do any recruitment with the military that are leaving the military? Because that is where some of these universities are bringing them in because of the GI Bill.
Yeah.
And so, they go and they do their recruitment, and then, of course, they get stuck with a tuition so high.
Yeah, I just had.
And they wanna get out and they can't because they won't allow them to transfer until they pay all their bills.
Yeah, all over the country, there's heavy recruitment for
With the military.
veterans.
Cause in particular in Texas with Hazelwood, it's all paid for.
Exactly.
So they don't look at the price tag of 30,000 versus 3,600. We have a presence at Fort Bliss now. We will continue to expand that presence with Fort Bliss. I agree.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir. So we talked about the challenge we have, the big challenge we have regarding the all-time low unemployment rate, 3.3% in October. The purpose also of our discussion here is to have to evaluate our 2-year tuition increase cycle, which is ending in summer, and then we're having to approach the Tuition and Fees Committee looking at a tuition increase for the next 2 years. We need to plan, as it was mentioned, we need to plan impact on the potential tax increase cap of 2.5% that was just announced by Governor Abbott not too long ago. And also, it's not even just that. You're talking about a 2/3 vote to have even above the 2.5% in tax increase cap. Right now, if you remember, it's 8%.
So we talked about this in Austin yesterday and the day before as well. The 2.5% is 2.5% on revenue. It's not even 2.5% on your tax rate.
On revenue?
On the revenue
is it?
that you
Oh.
generate.
No, you can't,
Okay.
you can't raise your revenue.
Your revenue cannot increase by 2.5%. So say you're in an area like Houston or Collin in Plano, and the property taxes are going so much up, they would cap at 2.5% of last year's revenue, not the tax rate.
Your total revenue, like for us to be 138?
No, our tax revenue.
Oh,
So
tax
our tax
revenue.
revenue is $52 million.
Yeah,
So 2.5% is what they're looking at. Yeah.
As we discussed earlier, we need to probably plan for potential decrease in state funding for the 2020-21. So 2021, it's still now, another year down the line, but we're gonna have to plan for that. Planning for operating expenses of new facilities. And in our best estimate right now, Northwest, Trans Mountain, and Valle Verde Transportation Training Center, we're looking at probably summer of 18-19. If it is the case, if we are to start classes for the summer, it could be that we don't start until fall, but we still have to plan for an operating budget for the new facility. Valle Verde, Mission Del Paso, and Rio Grande, we're looking at 19-20 fiscal year, which would be during the new legislative. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Where would we come up with monies for additional operating expenses for the new facilities?
So,
how would we, obviously it comes from operating expenses, and so we'd have to add to that or expand to that, but where would we pull
either
from?
that, or hopefully we would have additional enrollment.
Well, I know, that's, but if we don't, because the economy is so booming and enrollment is decreasing, where do we get the money?
There's two, we know the state's gonna cut, there's two other revenue streams for the institution,
Oh,
tuition
boy.
fees and taxes.
Hit the kids who are.
So I would say a couple of things. It's the right question.
And we have to pay for it.
I don't care about the economy, I'm glad it's good, but we are gonna work really hard with Summer Pell to increase enrollment. We're gonna work really hard we already have a partnership with Socorro that we're gonna move forward with and begin with them to increase, starting the first week of April, to increase enrollment by having a one-stop shop at their 6 comprehensive high schools. In addition, the other 2 are tuition fees, and we're planning for the next 2-year cycle. Our plan all along was to have an increase, to recommend a tuition increase to the board. We did one last year, we didn't have an increase at all this year, so students had 2 years to plan. So we would bring forward another tuition, do not have a plan, even currently, that's a board decision, but my recommendation would not be to touch taxes at all. That's my recommendation.
Well, usually when we don't touch taxes, we touch students, and when we touch students, we don't touch taxes.
That's correct. That's right.
Because we'd be,
And we have to balance that with what our
we did
plans are
both
for
at
the
the
future.
same time, it would be bad. Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, and of course, the other wild card here is our impact of GASB 75 on fund balance. And that would impact our unrestricted net position. So you're going to hear Ms. Reinert this evening when she presents the audit results about that potential of GASB 75. At this point, we still don't know what that is. We do have our share, what it's supposed to be, but we don't have an actual grand total amount that we actually understand. And so we've reached out to ERS, and they just have not responded to Mr. Flores. Mr. Flores sent an email during the week. Do you have any idea how much we're talking about here? You know, what is the state's unfunded liability for OPEB, for health insurance? And he has not received an answer. They probably don't, maybe they're just afraid of telling us because it's not especially the best news. So obviously this is going to impact our fund balance, and we're working towards building that fund balance to absorb, but we absorbed $22 million on retirement on TRS. And absorbing another $22 million is obviously challenging. If it's above that, it would be obviously very difficult for everyone in the state.
So potentially it could be higher than that?
It could be. Could be higher than that. They told us expect to be as bad as TRS, if not worse. That was the news. So, again, I went over this. It's in your handout. Here, this just shows your budget by executive level. So this is the basis. This is what we're going to be reviewing to come up with a preliminary budget when we come before you sometime in May. So fall of 2016, that was the first time we implemented a 2-year tuition rate schedule. And the timing of the increase was meant to be for each fall semester in between legislative years, so middle of the base year. Current cycle is effective fall 2016 through the summer of 2018. There's a caveat, is that in a new biennium, if we get cut by the state drastically, we may have to approach the student again for tuition increase, even though it would be in the middle of the cycle. We have to determine the amount of increase per credit hour, and I'm going to be presenting that in just a minute, and then present the increase recommendation to the Tuition and Fees Committee and SGA meetings. And we are working on scheduling those for the first week of February. So when hopefully I can come back to you on February the 15th and maybe giving you an update of where we are. Because we're really looking at taking this tuition plan proposal for board approval at the February 28th board meeting. And the reason why is that the March board meeting is on the 29th, and we're going to be opening fall registration on April the 1st. Well, actually April the 1st, April the 2nd. Okay, day after Easter.
We're starting on Monday the 2nd, and the biggest reason, and it's the same time we're going to start the college-bound initiatives with Socorro and others, to really capture that audience while they're still in high school and close the deal there. But we've always started enrollment early in that time period, but we need to let students know what they're going to be paying, and that's why we have to have that situated.
Joshette, are you guys tracking how many students finish in 2 years?
How many students are in, sir?
Well, you said, okay, for 2 years we're not raising tuition. How many students finish?
We won't, it's a good question,
Yeah.
Judge. We won't know until August, as the 2-year period ends, but in the past, we've had less than 5% of students finish in 2 years. Yeah. And the only way students can finish in 2 years is if they have dual credit. Yeah, dual credit.
current tuition and fee structure, you do have that in your handout, so for the sake of time, I'll just move over to what we are looking at scenarios. Tuition rate increase for 18-19 and 19-20 would be over a 2-year period, which means that in 19-20 we will not be seeking a tuition increase unless we do get cut by the state fairly drastically. So currently our resident tuition rate is $94 per credit hour. If we were to increase by $1, that would correspond about 1.06% increase.
Here's the answer to your question, Ms. Solis.
And that would generate about close to $400,000 with an increase of $3. And notice that we broke it down between resident and non-resident. It's difficult for us to recommend a tuition increase for resident and not do anything for the non-resident. And so we try to keep the same
amount. We're not doing a larger amount.
We try, well, what we looked at for an increase of $1, in order to generate the same percentage increase, we would have to increase the non-resident rate by 1.75, $1.75. And of course, with $3 increase, then you look at $5 for non-resident in order to keep more or less the same percentage increase. You kind of have to extrapolate that percentage, and we certainly can work on this a little bit better. But this is kind of a overview of, we're looking at 1, 3, 4, and 6.
Does that include any fees increases?
So no general use fee, because that is pretty much set. We have enough right now to cover our bond debt on an annual basis. The fees we would be looking at is probably your 3-peat fee, and then your distance ed fee. Okay, and that would be increased by in the same proportion.
For the next meeting, could you please have some information on what the distant fee is with some of the other colleges, Austin,
Sure.
South Texas?
Absolutely.
Because I bet you we're not.
It's higher.
Yeah.
It is higher.
So, I know probably sometime soon, you will come back with the recommendation of where you think you should increase by $3 or $4 or $6. I mean, to $1 really doesn't get us even.
This is just to give you an idea what $1, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
So we like 4 or 6. Because if you look at 4 or 6, obviously you look at the revenue that is generated, that's net tuition revenue. When we say net, we take into consideration.
10. So, and remember, this would be for a 2-year cycle.
No, I know.
So, right now, from my perspective, the max that we would look at is 6.
What did we raise
We
2
raised
years
10.
ago? We did?
10.
Gosh.
Yes.
So it will,
And
then
why
like
aren't we
we're going
looking at
back.
8 or 10 also right now?
But we certainly can.
I know,
I think
Get rid of 1
we have a
and
little
3.
concern
Yeah.
about where we stand in the state also.
Right.
Oh.
So-
We've got a balance where we
Yeah.
would move up to
So-
the 4th highest.
If we
This gives
did,
you
what,
here
10?
an
If we
idea.
did 8?
Yeah.
If we did 6, really? Darn. Oh, there it is right there. Look, our
Well,
chair. Ask
right
questions.
now, it's like, this is all the major colleges,
Oh,
and then we also included some border community colleges like Loreto is actually the highest right now, I think is, I want to say Blinn. I think Blinn College is pretty high. I think I have that.
What's our split, you say non-resident, that, we really don't have a non-resident population.
Oh, yes.
Very small, about
Yeah.
1,000 students.
Out of state, that's
Yeah.
really out of
Is
state.
that growing or not?
I'm sorry?
Are the numbers growing or not? on the,
Actually,
non-resident?
yeah, it is growing. It has grown a little bit. Our international student also has grown a little bit because international students do pay the non-resident rate, which is really out of state. Now, one of the things that when we approach the students and the tuition and fees committee, those are the avenues how they can pay for their tuition. So the good news here is that our federal Pell Grant is at $5,920. That's the current annual limit, $2,960 per semester, and you can see those amounts based on the number of hours that the student takes. They don't get anything if they take less than half time. But the big news here is that they're going to be a summer Pell Award starting this summer. And we really anticipate in the past when we had this kind of increase for the summer pair, when there's been a summer pair award, that has increased the enrollment.
Dr. Gonzalez, how do you plan on letting the high school students know about that?
So we're actually working on marketing campaigns right now, and then the intervention at Socorro is gonna be a huge, campaign for us to get out there.
We have another cycle of Pasadena High starting to work. So we're going about 6 regional high schools.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Solis, go back to your question. We're 6 times right now. With a $6 increase, we go fourth. We become 4th highest. The highest is Coastal Bend, actually. Can you go back for Mr. Uxer, 2 slides so he can see what we do? One more, Ms. Shaughnessy?
Please.
That one. No, that shows that shows the different institutions.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
That one. Yeah. We do monitor it, Mr. Uxer, very much, and you do see Doña Ana cheaper, but they don't have reciprocity, so our students would actually pay $2,700.
Yeah.
So we are by far, we're half of what anyone else is.
What I'm thinking about is that I understand why we don't, but you see Western Tech and you see Southwest University on TV, and that's, that's what people watch.
And those ads, by the way, are, so you're gonna see them during the Super Bowl,
expensive.
and they're $10,000 an
yeah,
ad
that-
during Super Bowl.
And every student is important to our enrollment, but the enrollment in the for-profits, the way I understand it, is minimal compared to our.
It continues to go down, yeah, the largest for-profit is Southwest University, and they serve about 1,500 students.
Now, did you see Western Technical opened up a bachelor's?
I saw that they're offering a baccalaureate.
How's Pima doing? I mean, I guess they're targeting a
They're so
specific-
new, Mr. Uxer, that there's no information out there, I'm not able to monitor
I was
yet.
just saying, they happen to target just the medical, and I was wondering if that affects our Rio Grande.
Not yet. Not
I
yet.
tell you what, if we took some money and invested it in students going to recruit students at the high schools, we would have a huge hike in enrollment.
Couldn't we do that as an internship?
Well, it's great suggestions, and it's part of what we're looking at doing as well. When we go, we're taking students with us as well, Dr. Graham. So I agree, and so we have a number of students that are outstanding, whether it be student government, Phi Theta Kappa, our student technology services, to be able to recruit those students as well.
Just like you get one school district that is more amenable to us than,
Socorro.
and how about the least? Okay,
El Paso.
yeah, that's right.
It's El Paso, I'm straight up, it's El Paso.
My pleasure.
Ms. Shaughnessy?
Yes?
You're holding this up, please.
I was just wondering if you're aware of the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, okay. So you have this again in your packet. This has to do with the funding strategies, and I just put in 18-19 because 19-20, right now it's still very much unknown until we have a better understanding about the funding of the facilities, what's going to happen with the tax revenue, so on and so forth in 19-20. Normally I would show you two different scenarios for 18-19 and 19-20. So down the line, hopefully I will be able to show you a little bit much better pro forma information on when we're looking at 19-20, assuming based on what we're going to be doing in 18-19. So 18-19, if these are just the scenarios of what happens to the budget with no tuition increase, and then with tuition increases of the different rates. And as you can see, if we go with $4 per credit hour, we would have a preliminary budget surplus of about $2.8 million. And then with a tuition increase of $6 per credit hour, notwithstanding, of course, also the increase in non-resident rate, this is only for resident rate, $3.6 million. So that gives you an idea the kind of budget surplus we would have to fund whatever we need to fund in 18-19 when we get a little bit closer to the whole picture about the budget.
But
So-
are you, and,
I'm sorry, again, you went with the 6 as the highest only so that we don't
Is it black
become.
and white? Yeah.
We're trying to be
comparability
sensitive,
to
Dr.
that.
Graham. We're trying to balance what we need to operate the institution and also be balanced that we're not we're not the highest in the state. We're trying to balance it.
And do we know, I guess we don't know, but at what point are we going to know if even, say we did the $6 tuition increase, that what we need for our spending or expenses in 2018, 2019 will be 3 mil?
That will be what?
That will be $3 million worth. like
Well, again, it's gonna be probably, I wanna say, looking at the May timeframe
Okay.
to have a little bit better understanding. Of course, the revenues are still also pretty conservative at this point. Just to kind of give you an idea, what 1% salary increase with benefits cost $920,000. So if you're looking at 3%, you can see how much that would cost, $2.7 million, right?
Again, Ms. Shansi, thank you very
You're
much for
very
the information.
welcome.
Would you please add
No,
the,
it's fine.
maybe the
I know, vámonos.
$8, I don't know if anybody else wants
Sure.
to see anything higher.
We'll do that.
Just, and you could omit the dollar, I don't think anybody else is interested.
That's just to help you multiply.
Yeah, no, I understand, but if we can just add the $8, I don't know, the board wants to see $10 increase also.
I don't want us to be up there in the top, most expensive. It's
Right.
just not,
But we gotta continue, well, I mean, we need to look at it and see what it.
yeah, but we need to look at other options besides just increasing the tuition, because now we're putting all the burden on the students.
Maybe our only option, but.
No.
Again, Pam, would you please not, schedule Ms. Shansi and her team, on a day where we can go as long as we need to?
Would it be
Like that
okay?
at the next,
Pardon,
meeting
Chauncey?
in February?
So would it be okay if we present, because I mean, the concern here is going back and forth with the tuition and fees committee. I want to make sure that we also take them, that when we go to the tuition and fees committee, I tell them that we're going to be presenting to the board again, and then reconvene them in February. So February the 15th probably will
Now,
be.
if it's one item, I mean, we can squeeze that in any time, but when it's a presentation like this, I think it needs to be on days where
Correct.
we're not going to have a full board meeting afterwards.
Okay,
But if you do have that on the 15th?
you have the facilities.
Yeah.
Just schedule it on that day.
Yeah.
We could do it on that
But I
day.
think she wants to know if we're gonna consider above 6%, so that she can present that to the,
I would like us to see eight, I know we looked at 10 last time.
Okay, where does say please, sir?
We end up, fourth. It stays right in that same level.
But then that's assuming that they're not increasing also, one of those things. And Dr. I understand exactly what you're saying, and one of the reasons we're all here is because we wanna make sure that we keep the tuition as reasonable and as reachable as possible and not push it out of line to where people can't afford to come. But at the same time, I think we need to keep offering all the opportunities that students need.
We'd be fourth. We'd stay at the same level, whether it be 6 or 8. And that's if none of them raise.
And the student success points are not gonna be increased?
Student tax, the 50 community colleges, our pitch to the legislature is going to be to increase student success
But you
points.
think they're gonna consider it at all?
I think it has the best chance of any kind of proposal.
And we still are not anywhere to what they initially
Oh, no.
promised or.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Hill, I'm sorry, just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
something.
just a quick FYI, federal Pell Grant is the only federal grant basically that does pay up to as low as 3 hours.
Oh, it's going up in the budget, isn't it?
And it's proposed $100,
$100.
6,020.
No, but $100 covers
Yes,
that
it would cover it.
tuition.
But it does cover as low as.
And
We
what
just
percentage
determined,
do
motion-
we have that are receiving enrollment?
Motion to adjourn. 87% of our first time in college students are on some type of aid, and 97% of that is Pell or scholarship. Okay, motion to adjourn. It is 5:41.